In this video, I will continue my discussion of the ideal of pure reason. And in this one, I will talk about Kant's refutation of the cosmological argument for God and his refutation of the argument from design. So the cosmological argument is essentially the argument uh, that the universe had to be caused by something, and that cause is God. And so in modern times, what is called the Kalam cosmological argument is sort of the popular one. So it goes like this: everything that begins to exist has a cause. The universe began to exist, therefore the universe has a cause. And then, so to try and show that that cause is God, it goes further and says that no scientific explanation can provide a causal account of the origin of the universe, since such are part of the universe. So you can't say that anything in the universe caused the universe to exist. Therefore, the cause must be personal. Non-natural, personal, intelligent, things like that. So this is kind of the modern version of the cosmological argument. But Kant is going to argue against what he calls the Leibnizian cosmological argument. So Leibniz's argument, cosmological argument, according to Kant, goes like this. So if there exists anything, then there must also exist an absolutely necessary being. Since contingent things depend on something for their existence, the regress of contingent things must terminate at a necessary thing. Then I exist, which we know from, from the cogito ergo sum, I think, therefore I am. Therefore, an absolutely necessary being exists. And so this step two here is what is sort of supposed to differentiate this from the ontological argument, which is using only concepts. This is actually using something empirical. So, that I exist is something I know empirically. And so, you know, I know that something, at least one thing exists, which is me. And so I am experienced as contingent, and so there must be something necessary, sort of, at the end of this regress of contingent things. So therefore, an absolutely necessary being exists. Then the absolutely necessary being must be thoroughly determined through his concept. So the ens realissimum, the what I've been calling omega, is thoroughly determined a priori, since by definition we know all the predicates that apply to it, because by definition all affirmative predicates apply to it. Therefore, the ens realissimum is the only thing that could be absolutely necessary being. And I kind of liked this line here that Kant says after giving this argument. There are so many sophistical principles in this cosmological argument that it really seems as if speculative reason had summoned all its dialectical skill in order to produce the greatest possible transcendental illusion. So, Kant once again is kind of dunking on Leibniz here, like he was in the Amphiboles. So the first sophistical trick that Kant points out is that while claiming to be empirical, this argument actually smuggles in the ontological argument, which was already refuted. So the first stage of the argument, steps 1, 2, and 3 here, so steps 1, 2, and 3 here are empirical, where step 2, like I said, is the empirical one. But the second stage, steps 4, 5, and 6, is merely a sort of restatement of the ontological argument, and therefore, since Kant says he already refuted that, we already know that that is invalid there. So secondly, the argument assumes we can infer a necessary thing in the causal line of contingent things by using the concepts of contingency and causality, which apply only to our experiences. Since anything I come in contact with, I can think of it as non-existent without contradiction. And so he's saying that that this necessary thing, that it's assuming that this necessary thing is in the causal line of contingent things, but we never experience anything as being necessary, and so this thing cannot be in the line of contingent things. It can't be. It can't exist sort of in time uh, because time is how we sort of is what we bring to bear on our experiences, and we can't sort of uh, experience anything as being necessary. So third, if we want to avoid smuggling in the ontological argument, then we have to use only what can be empirically established. But it is impossible to empirically establish that something is a necessary being, and so we cannot avoid the ontological argument. So the next one is, so Kant calls it the physico-theological proof, but it's the argument from design that Kant just gives this different name to. So the modern argument from design goes something like this. So everything in existence that we experience is complex, ordered, and obeying of laws. So then the disjunction, either this came about by mere chance or it was designed to be this way by a supreme intelligence. Then that something is so complex, ordered, and law-abiding could come about by mere chance is astronomically unlikely. So this is often used, so the watches or the 747. We know, for example, that we come across a functioning watch or a 747 jet, that these things didn't just kind of get blown together by a windstorm. And so, that's sort of the William Paley watchmaker argument, or I forget who did the 747 jet argument, but that's one that you come up a lot in sort of modern apologetics. So therefore, it's likely that existence was designed by a supreme intelligence. And so I did actually put it here in sort of probabilistic terms, which is something, like Richard Swinburne and people like that in Alvin Plantinga, who are involved in like Christian apologetics, also often put it in probabilistic terms rather than sort of categorical terms. So Kant puts it this way, and this is enumerated by Kant but put in list form by me. And I'm not going to read through this. It's in Kant's, sort of Baroque style of writing, but it's pretty much saying the same thing as this. That it's much much astronomically more likely, according to this argument, that the sort of the complexity and orderedness that we see in reality had to have been designed by something intelligent. And I'm not going to go through like all the sort of arguments and counter arguments to this that are in modern apologetics. I actually have two fairly long posts on my blog that go into these arguments in a lot more detail if you are interested in sort of the current state of this debate. But here I am just sort of trying to explicate sort of Kant's refutation of this, which is just, one among, numerous refutations that are possible. So if you're interested in going beyond Kant's sort of conceptualization and refutation of these arguments, then I would recommend checking out my blog posts on it, and I'll leave links to that in the description. So if you're interested in that, then go ahead and check those out. All right, so Kant talks of an analogy at the end here. So the analogy that Kant means is that that art and sort of other human products, sort of gadgets and things like that, which we easily infer to be designed by intelligence, is analogous to how we would infer that nature itself was designed by an intelligence. So Kant says that taking this design this design argument, all we could reasonably do is infer a being capable of arranging the already existing matter according to the nature of the matter itself, but could not infer a being capable of actually creating the matter and bestowing upon the matter the nature which we find in it. So, essentially, if we want to put it in more modern terms, that all we could infer is that there is, some intelligence that can sort of manipulate atoms and molecules and sort of, generate the things we see, but that this we could not infer that this being was what actually created, sort of ex nihilo all the atoms and molecules and subatomic particles and things like that. All we could say, and we could not say that this being gave, the charge and spin and things like that to all of these particles. All we could say is that all we could ever infer is that this being was capable of sort of manipulating this matter which already existed. But even if we accept the existence of such a designer, it would not be enough to prove an all-sufficient, omnipotent being. Therefore, Kant says the physico-theological proof cannot bridge the gap between this intelligent designer and a supreme creator without once again smuggling in the ontological argument. And so Kant makes the point again. He actually says that this argument has to smuggle in the cosmological argument, that the cosmological argument had to smuggle in the ontological argument. And so by sort of the transitive property, what he calls the physico-theological proof has to smuggle in the ontological argument. But anyway, those are Kant's refutations of these two arguments for the existence of God. So once again, Kant was a believer. Kant believed in God. He was as pious as the day is long. But Kant, well, I won't go into it now, but his reason for believing in God had more to do with his moral philosophy. What Kant is trying to do here is show that theoretical, or what he sometimes calls pure or speculative reason, cannot prove the existence of God. We can only prove the existence of God, as he says in his later work, through his moral philosophy. But speculative reason or pure reason cannot prove the existence of God. And so that's what Kant believes he has shown here. So anyway, I hope you found this video helpful, and I will see you in the next one.